Yep. So people are leaving blue states, going to migrating to red states, and this is going to cause significant political changes as far as Democrats losing power and Republicans gaining power. To me, this is super interesting. Something, well, first of all, I'd like to see, but not because of just partisan. Not that I think Republicans are so great. Um, I see Republicans as moderates, and Democrats have left as socialists. So anything towards more free market is better. But It's not so much about the horse race to me. To me, it's more about competition and actual people's real preferences to be expressed. If competition makes everything better. Before, these cities had a monopoly. If you want to have a good job, a high-paying job, you have to live on the coast, New York or LA, San Francisco, if you want to work in tech or some other cities. And basically, because they had a monopoly, their services, as far as their price, the taxes, and their services, any monopoly, the price goes up, service goes down, quality goes down. So I'm loving to see any kind of competition come in, and LA or New York, even for the liberals that actually choose to remain in the liberal cities, well, if they see people fleeing and their tax base shrinking, that's going to be a kick in their pants to actually use the tax dollars more efficiently. So better for everybody. My other interest is actual remote working and how that's going to change. I mean, technology has a flattening effect, and remote work is completely change everything. The competition, could you even imagine? I mean, that's everything. Like work, even dating. The people, let's say, if you live in New York or LA, well, there's a limit to what type of people you can date, as far as geographically. But if you can remote work anywhere in the world, we can move to Vietnam, Thailand, Poland, Russia. Your dating pool expands so much. I mean, so it's as far as the type of people you can date. So your type of relationships. This is a radical change. And now let's say people who are competing for on the dating pool in New York, well, now they have a way wider competition. It's like girls will be competing, or guys will be competing with other people from around the world, because now if location is not important, you could really I mean, yes, some people are bound by family, but if you could migrate anywhere in the world, well, everything changes. Competition heats up, and I think everything is going to be more competitive, better, more services, less taxes, higher quality of standard of living, and they would have no choice but to really meet the market and meet the market demand. But I believe the government hates competition. They're going to go down kicking and screaming. The U.S. already, I think it was Janet Yellen, went and had a huge Davos-style conference where they were trying to strong arm Ireland and have like a minimal corporate tax rate. I mean, kind of, U.S. is kind of, it's sad. U.S. was a free market leader, and now it's because of democracy, the rules, regulation, taxes, they became so bloated, so unruly that, I mean, the example, how I would describe it is, let's say U.S. was like the best restaurant in town, had the best food for the best prices and super popular. And now this restaurant gets worse and worse and worse, but the price keeps going up. It's losing more and more customers, but it has a kind of a monopoly, has a lot of locations. So now they're lobbying the government to be like, hey, we're trying to get other restaurants, collude with other restaurants to keep the prices from going down too much, or to regulate. So like, hey guys, you're stealing too many of our customers. We need to come together, and we need to form some kind of cartel because this is where we're losing too many customers. This is not cool. That's how sad the U.S. is going out. But let's take a look at this article. The U.S. Census Bureau released figures Tuesday showing how populations in states like New York have fallen in the last year. Analysis of statistics by the Brookings Institute suggests Democrat strongholds like New York and California could lose congressional seats. New York's 126,000 people leave between 2019 and 2020. Figures represent 0.65% of the population. So basically, they're losing. New York is losing 0.5%. Illinois, another Democratic stronghold, losing 0.6%. Hawaii, you see, look. If you're looking at this map right here, you would initially you could see, well, with remote work, you can see why you would leave from these northern states. People would leave, and hey, why not go to the southern states? Florida, Texas, Arizona, where it's always warm. But then, wait, Montana, Oregon, they gain population. California, that has a nice southern area with perfect weather, they lost. Atlanta, Alabama, they lost people too. So, interesting. Especially Hawaii. Hawaii has got some great weather, so it looks like it's not just weather related. It looks like it has to do with policies, taxes. William Frey, chief demographer from the Brookings Institute, used the census population estimates in combination with similar estimates over the last decade. Then he applied an algorithm designed to calculate reapportionment, which was created by experts at the University of Michigan. When the boundary lines are redrawn, Frey predicts that New York will lose one congressional seat, taking the state to 26. California would lose one of its seats in the House for the first time, bringing it to 52. Florida, meanwhile, could overtake New York for the first time in history, gaining 2 seats for a total of 29. Alabama, Illinois, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island will also all lose a seat. The biggest gains would be mostly in the South and West. Texas would gain 3 seats, giving it 39. Arizona, Colorado, Oregon, Northern Carolina, Montana would each gain a seat. Well, actually, this reminds me. I was listening to a Vox podcast, and their hope, they too understand how remote work and people are splitting everywhere, but they were trying to give it a silver lining gloss here, try to be optimistic, saying, hey, Democrats are losing because there's so many Democrats packed into big large cities. But we only for electoral college they only get a certain amount of electors. So they were hoping that if the Democrats, the blue Democrats, can more spread out throughout the country, the Democratic voters will be more powerful, because the more they cluster together, the least powerful they are as far as the electoral college, because the president is not elected by popular majority. That's one theory, but the reality is boring out. It's completely different. It looks like the Democrats are losing power, and a genius move by, it was the Trump tax plan, but really it's probably the mastermind behind it was probably Grover Norquist, and the genius stroke was to eliminate or cap state and local taxes from federal taxes, because before, when they were not capped, you can rich millionaires and billionaires could deduct their super high state and local taxes from their from their federal taxes, and that would diffuse the cost of living in a high tax state. But once you remove that deduction, or I think it was capped at 10,000, it was much more expensive for the rich people to live in these blue states. And yeah, so these rich people are migrating out. The ones that are left are lobbying Biden right now to remove that. I think the Build Back Better was going to raise the cap. I'm not quite sure where it's at, but wow, I mean, way to put the screws on them. The census, which is carried out every 10 years, determines how the 453 seats in the House of Representatives are divided among 50 states based on the population changes recorded. The official legislative map based on the 2020 census will be released next year. Tuesday's figures released by the Census Bureau show New York's population fell 0.5%, 0.65, from July to July 2020. New York's population has been falling since 2016, but the most recent drop was significantly larger than previous years. Reasons were not given in the data, but New Yorkers' cost of living and lack of space, as well as increasing crime, has driven people to look for alternatives in the last year. Remote work opportunities have also enabled people moving further afield. Yes, and I was saying, but then, I mean, people moving from state to state, it's interesting and exciting, but I'm also thinking how much more exciting would be if the federal, let's say the federal government was disbanded completely and all the states made all the decisions. So the differences between red and blue states will be vastly different, because you can move from state to state, but you still got to deal with the federal government with their federal taxes and their laws, and it doesn't matter where you move. And that kind of blurs everything, that kind of stands off the peaks, the differences between each state. Now, unfortunately, the federal government is getting more and more powerful, but how awesome would it be if the federal government itself lost power, delegated it more to the states? The differences between states would become even more pronounced. And even though people talk a good game about being charitable, voting for higher taxes, helping the poor, blah, 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 I would bet you anything that people would move where the jobs are, where the opportunities are. And those will be in red states that are very pro-market. Even though people's politics, people don't understand anything about economics. They want a whole bunch of welfare, or they say they would vote for a whole bunch of welfare. But when it comes down to it, they would move where the jobs are, point blank. They wouldn't stay in low opportunity, Detroit-like blue state. The numbers tallied through July were somewhat affected by COVID-19, but the trend was apparent before the pandemic. Part of last year's sharp decline was due to more deaths and restrictions in immigration. In recent weeks, a string of high-profile big tech companies have announced they're leaving California for Texas, including Tesla, Oracle, Hewlett-Packard. Many CEOs cited lower taxes and fewer regulations as the reason to move to the Lone Star State. Well, that's obvious. Today's figures show Illinois was the state with the second largest population drop, losing 0.63% of their residents. Hawaii lost 0.61%. West Virginia 0.58%. In the year that ended July 2020, United States population grew at its slowest since around 1900, when the government began conducting the data. The new data shows that when 2020 census numbers are announced, the 2010 to 2020 decade growth rate could be the lowest in any decade since the first census was conducted in 1790. Population growth in the U.S. had already been sluggish even before the virus because of the dip in fertility and immigration restrictions. But Frey pointed to the at last 322 American lives lost to this COVID-19 since March as making it the stagnant growth trend worse. I quote, "I think it's a far glimpse of where many may be heading as far as low population growth. It's telling you that this is having an impact on population. Well, there you have it. There is another topic about before people thought that the biggest crisis was overpopulation, and now probably the biggest crisis is underpopulation. But that's a debate and topic for a different video.